Okay. Well, good evening to you and welcome to this program of Rodney Groundings. I'm your host, Dion Abrams, and on this evening's program, I have with me Brother Tacuma Ogunseye. We've been sharing the hour for the past many
Years can't even count over, brother. Many years.
you know, it's a job that we have to do, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we do it so that you can be enlightened on issues as they unfold in this land of ours.
And
So,
and
yeah,
before me, you and Desmond Trotman,
Desmond Trotman.
put in many years
Right,
on the
right.
program.
At one time, we had Norris Peter, who
We
used
did
to be
too.
very
Mm.
regular
Yeah.
with us. But uh, we're here, and there are things to talk about. The people of Danam still, we can talk about that briefly, have some concerns which they ask you
Mm.
to share. Right?
Well, we have been working. We have had a close relationship with the community, and and the activists there on the ground, they have access to the party and to the program, and a lot of them are staunch viewers of Walter Rodney Groundings. And they asked me to express a concern, a growing concern that villagers are, having. Um, the Denamsel Community Center was built on lands donated by a resident of the community, a family, and also probably with a building and so. And it becomes the central, for years, the community center. My understanding is that there's a committee that manages the community center, and they probably have struck a deal with the government, for the government to do some repair work and updating the center, which I guess residents are probably happy to have an improved center. But some of the residents are suspicious of the government's intention, and they are concerned that the minister may very well want to move the control of of the community center away from the village and put it under the RDC, okay,
RDC and NDC.
and the NDC, okay. So that is a growing concern, and they want it to be highlighted. Now, what is striking is, the PPP should be worried, but they don't really care. I mean, as a government, when you enter into a community, quote unquote, to do developmental works, which as a government you ought to do because it's taxpayers' money. But as soon as a PPP enter African community, there's always concerns that they either after your land or after your property. That is what they have over from when they came to power in 1992 to 2015, and now they returned to power, the last 3 years. That is the kind of relationship they establish with African community. As soon as they enter, people automatically got a suspicion that they not come to do good, they come to undermine. So I told them that I will raise the matter, so this program is always there for people who want these things to be
But
aired.
if the ground is basically like a private entity, even though, because I know what number, when we went to quarantine, it's 53 or Union, I think. They have a similar situation. Their ground and the center is the communities, it doesn't belong, it doesn't fall under the NDC or anything. And the PPP at one time tried to negotiate an arrangement to repair the place, but then to have some kind of control of it, and the people refused. All right, and so they have basically bastardized that particular center and the ground. Um, and over the years, we know that prior to 2015, that they had taken control of all the community centers and grounds in the villages and put them under what they call management committees, and lots of friction in those communities, people fighting for control and so. But I'm happy to announce that they have now reverted to having the grounds under the control of the NDC, which was the best thing, which would have taken away that struggle, that fight for control. Because what happened when the grounds are rented and so on, the money would have gone to the NDC, which would have helped with the financing of projects and also with the maintenance of the grounds. But when you put it in these committees, when the money goes into somebody's hands, you don't even know, there's no real accountability and so on. And so the grounds have gone back to the NDCs, and that's a good step. It's a sensible thing. So with this situation at
Denhamstel,
Denhamstel,
we gotta keep eye on it.
I'm hopeful that they're not going to try to force themselves on the community and the ownership of that facility. So we'll keep an eye open to follow what's happening in Denhamstel. The other thing that it's a worrying development. I mean, Israel has demonstrated with the backing of Biden and so on, and even the US and France and so on, contempt for the United Nations, particularly the head of the United Nations, attacking him for statements that he would have made and so on, even calling for him to resign. Now the ICJ has made several pronouncements, a long list of pronouncements. It took the guy about nearly 2 or 3 minutes to read.
Hours.
Right. And I see no signs of any bending by Israel to any of the dictates passed by the court. In fact, subsequent to that ruling and the decisions that would have been handed on, Israel upped the ante in Gaza with more bombings and so on. I think people were held up in a hospital trying to secure themselves because the last report I saw, 100 and something people were killed or something like that through the bombing and so on. And then there's also the fighting, the soldiers on the ground just killing people. I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, you're quite right. I mean, the Israeli Prime Minister made it very clear that they will not be respecting the ICJ ruling or anything from the United Nations. And he made it clear that nobody can stop Israel from pursuing what they're pursuing, even, to the embarrassment of his main sponsor, the United States. Because he said nobody would stop them, But I think that the ruling it is a victory for the South African initiative. It is a victory for peace-loving people in the world and people who want the international order, to be implemented. The fact that the UN court, which is the highest court in the United Nations, came out very clearly with some interim ruling, which, in my judgment, even people say they didn't call for ceasefire, but they call on Israel to stop, the actions that is leading to genocide. And they call on Israel to prosecute persons who have perpetuated those acts. They call on Israel, among other things, to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza and so forth and so forth. So, without calling directly for ceasefire, what they're saying, they call for measures that amongst the ceasefire, because you implement those measures, you got to get a ceasefire. But it is clear that it's an important political victory for the anti-Israeli forces and the forces who wanted to see international conventions are being honored, and to demonstrate to Israel and other states that, you're not above international law. But I don't think it will have immediate impact on the ground. But I think it will form the basis for the Israeli forces and the forces who are fighting against genocide in Gaza to widen the appeal, you know, among NGOs and other popular, institutions for boycott of Israeli goods and to, for boycott of countries who have been supplying Israel with these, weapons of destruction. I think it will give some amount of fluid to that kind of a movement, but I don't think it will impact what is happening on the ground immediately. Its impact on the ground will take time. And I've noticed, that United States, Britain, Canada, Netherlands, Switzerland, Sweden, a number of these European white nations have announced that they have put a pause on the aid that they provide for Gaza through the United Nations on some flimsy, pretext that there is evidence that some of the Hamas people who participate in the assault on Israel on October 7th, some of them work with the UN agency. And that is the excuse they're using at a time when there's this great, humongous, humanitarian crisis. To say you cut off humanitarian aid on the basis of that, something is actually wrong with a certain section of the white mind. I made a point last week and I have to repeat it here. There's something really wrong on this matter. It's clear racism. They see the Palestinians as non-white and they see the Israelis as white. And what we're facing here is not principle, it's not no moral decency, but outright racist behavior.
But, subsequent to the war, the World War II, a lot of the Nazi agents who were very vicious in terms of dealing with people in the concentration camps and so on. Even up to recently, I think one was held in Argentina, they're still hunting for those guys because many of them had to disguise themselves and adopt new identities and so on to try to escape prosecution. Netanyahu is actually carrying out genocide right now, but we hear no talk of bringing him to justice for crimes against humanity. What is your view on that?
No, he should be brought to justice. We have the protection of the United States and the West. So that's the difference, But, the Nazis were defeated in the war, therefore they were stripped of any protection, okay? But those elements in Israel leadership has the protection of the United States and the West. And you see, if people who are familiar with Israeli politics, there is two Israel coexisting at the moment in Israel. There is the historic Israel, which was established by the United Nations with the help of Britain and other countries in 1947 or whatever the year. And that state was given a certain amount of Palestinian land. And then we know what happened. Settlers move in and they take more lands and they evict a whole set of Palestinians out of the place. But that settler movement is headed by the Zionists, the religious Jews, Orthodox religious Jews. And over time, they have been strengthening the whole and expanding the Israeli states, in the settlement. So you have the historical Israel, but you have this new reality of this expanded Zionist, fundamental racist elements who have evolved as a political and powerful electoral political force. And they control large sections of Israeli state at present. And there, it is those elements that the Israel ruling party is in aligned with. And before the actual October 7th, Israel was in turmoil. Those two Israels were at war. But
what I noticed too, that there's an African Israel like group too also.
Yeah, some Israelis are Africans. In fact, they are the genuine Israelis. I mean, those white Europeans are not really genuine Israelis. Those are the counterfeit. I mean,
But I was reading the other day that they gave them uh, 6 weeks or 6 months to leave the country. People who were born here, have their communities, and they're basically. I mean, this is kind of crazy, right? But they're saying all of the black Jews must leave Israel by a certain time.
The religious fundamentalist who controls the Israeli government now is clearly on the line of march.
But we are
Ethnic
the people
cleansing.
they're
They don't care. You think they care? Their logic is some people in the world can take you. We want this land. We got the might to take it, and we take it. And we dare the world to do anything about it. And they're very much supported by the Americans and the European governments.
Yeah, well, it's sad. But you know, the world is a place of evolution. Changes
Do come.
And so this might and
The thing that they have is being altered, with technology. And you see, the problem with the face in Israel is that the non-white Israelis population is increasing at a faster rate than the white Israeli population. So they're under that kind of population pressure. People are calculating within a few years, the majority Israelis who live in the Israeli territory will be non-whites. So that gets them more crazy.
It's a problem, but like you said, it has made them crazy. But the steps that they're taking to preserve themselves, it's like home. Here in Guyana, I'm talking about.
We got a similar mini logic.
Yeah. And they're taking steps to basically have a demographic shift. Importing people from Pakistan and India and all these places without public knowledge, because like I said last week, the week before that, they're in the mosque, they're in the temples, and people are aware that these people are. And these are lumpen elements from what all appearances, people who are basically poor. But they're bringing them here because the Constitution allows for Commonwealth citizens who have been here at least one
for a year could we vote.
That they can vote, right? And so these machinations by the PPP are part of their way of rigging an election through a kind of, they're going to be able to defend it because the law allows for it. But I'm not hearing any outcry. And so you still have the Venezuelans that they are registering, people who are born in Venezuela, being registered as Guyanese, and we don't know who, and then you have these other Commonwealth citizens and so on. We don't know who else. If you check the record, they're saying that the tourism, the flights that came into Guyana, over 1 million people, I think, would have come on flights last year. We don't know how many of those have actually left and what they came for. You understand? So, I don't know, but at some point there must be raising of voices, particularly for the opposition, because they're...
No, but I think the opposition is raising the voices on some of these matters, but man, it past the point is simply PPP doesn't care. You see, we got to come to grips with this reality. Our parliamentary so-called democracy is a farce. We are not operating in a parliamentary situation that envisages that government and opposition are together, rulers, partners into the governance arrangement. And even though I am the government, when we go in parliament and I come with a budget or I come with a motion, if you could show me that there's aspects of my motion or my budget, okay, that got some flaws, and you could come with constructive ideas, I will incorporate the ideas. So we give on is a give and take. That is not what's happening in our parliament. There's no give and take. Our parliamentary politics have developed on the basis of domination. Okay? We come to the parliament to go to in a zero-sum game. Okay, we fight to the end. Who got power, win. Okay, we could debate and talk. At the end of the day, we vote. The ayes have it. You lose. So our parliament doesn't encourage a contestation of ideas. So you could talk as much as you want. Okay, unless you're prepared to back up your talks. We're bringing people in the streets. Okay, mobilizing your people. The government wouldn't listen. And we know right now the opposition is not in a position to bring people in the streets readily. And we got to face the fact. Our constituents are not in a position and a dispensation for readily intervention in the public space. The PPP understands that, okay, and they're using that in the what they were called the bad days when they deal with Burnham and the PNC. They had GAU. They had enough committed and rural elements, both the lumpen and residents, who every now and then they could rock the boat to support the politics. Okay? You know? They rock the boat to support the politics. Now, as much as Burnham was doing what he was doing, he respected the right of the PPP as a major opposition to do that. I call the shots in the tongue. Okay, you control the sugar belt, the rice belt. I know you're going to use those things as your instruments to fight back. But there's a rule of the game. Okay, and they come to understanding. That doesn't exist now. The PPP have no respect for that. The PPP really is telling the PNC, you know, we got you up on your knees. Unless you could get off your knees, we're gonna tramp you into the ground. And by extension, given the racial nature of the country, that's what they're telling black people, African people. We got you all on your knees. And until you all could get up and fight, okay, we're gonna trample you on the ground. And the response of the black community, and I'm saying community because I don't want to make it simply an issue of political leadership. It is wider. The community responsibility to deal with these problems wider than the party. The trade unions, NGOs, the churches, sports organizations in the village, this is a community challenge. And we haven't been responding sufficiently in a militant way. And that is why what is happening to us is happening. Anytime we start to respond militantly, the PPP can back off because they know that they can't sustain that behavior against us. But to the extent that we're not fighting, and to the extent that political leadership seems to want to go into another winner-take-all contest, the PPP is happy. I got money, I got control GCOM, I got money, you got money, I corrupting people with money all over the place. There's not a recipe for fair elections, and if you want to come and fight, come and fight. But once you come and fight, live with the results because you agree to you come in the contest agreeing to the rules. You know, so those are the challenges we have going forward. A lot of it is our own making. The day we decide, we fight him back. I'm telling you, it's going to begin to alter the politics because that's what politics is about. If I got power, and if I shout and sneeze, you go to sleep. I don't keep shouting and sneezing and tell you to sleep.
What about Jack Dale's assertion recently in response to what he claims are threats by the opposition leader at the rally that was held, that any violence that will be met with the full force of basically saying that, you know, the forces of the state will unleash all that they have against people who are...
Well, that is every dictator who controls a state behaves that way. Until when the engagement starts and they find that the forces who they want to unleash on people turn around and unleash on them. This was happening. You know, the thing about politics, man, is that you have to give space. The government, as a government, has ways to intimidate the opposition, or to put it this way, to put some latches upon the opposition and the supporters to keep them in their place. You know, we control the army, you control the police, you control law and order, and if you think we can put change, and that is acceptable politics. Once you don't care, to the extreme. The opposition, on the other hand, got other tools that they got to use to counter. And in every political space, there's an understanding that those two things will balance itself out. Okay, so when you don't expect an opposition faced with government threat of domination and bullyism will say that they ain't gonna fight back. They must say they're gonna organize to fight back. But any realistic political people, they expect them. Okay, well, we hope that none of we carry too far. But Jagdeo is a political bully. But he's a bully of people who are weak. Jagdeo is a political bully of the political weak. If he was leading the PPP in boredom days, you think he would risk that? He wouldn't risk that. But you see, he got power now, and he psychologically is a bully. And this is how bullies behave. Once they got the power, okay, they use it in a vicious way against you. It's only when you stand up to them and say, look, So if he's so confident that he could unleash the institutions of repression on the parliamentary opposition or the country as a whole, okay, that is his position. So be it, let you do it. People should not be, I would not be too worried about it. If he think he could do it and survive, so be it. It's come a point in time that all dictators is got to make the judgment. One of the things I know Burnham was clever with, even though the army was Burnham army, Black Army, his supporters, when he fighting the WPA and Rodney, Burnham never want the situation to reach a point where he got to depend on what the army do. Because he know that if he tell the army to act in a certain way against the opposition at the time, WPA and the army enact, he in trouble. So if they think they're more confident than even Burnham and that they could do what they like, let them do it. We only even know the answer over time, and that's my point. I don't get too worried about those things. It is legitimate, it's their legitimate right, okay, to have confidence that they have sufficient control of the state agencies of repression, and that they could use those state agencies of repression to achieve their political objective. That is their right. It is our right on the opposition to believe that we could neutralize that, if push come to shove. So I don't see nothing to lament.
Apart from the state agencies, the growing concern in some sections of the society is that the PPP is arming itself through the establishment of these so-called security agencies, and they're giving them access to very powerful weapons. I noticed one agency looking to import Air Force helicopters and all these things, so that we know that even in recent situations that calls were made to bring out this so-called security agency that has been extending itself in all areas of and that same bully, another bully that runs that institution, is also a racist. There was an incident on the bank where he actually ended up in a fight with a young man, threatened the guy with a gun, and the guy actually took the gun away from him and didn't use it.
You see, my brother, look, society is a basket of contradictions.
Yeah.
If a government decides for its own survival to invest in private armies, it undermines the national armies.
Russia is
but Russia is a superpower. There's a thing by
yeah, but
itself.
even the lessons.
That we saw what happened. But I mean, they're the class by themselves. They're the Americans. They could do what they like, and nobody got trouble them. But we third world dictators, and we third world leaders here who believe, that they could do what they like. The truth is, okay, if you begin to invest in private armies, you undermining and you're showing lack of confidence in the established army, you're creating a contradiction, and you're creating, different levels of power struggle in the country, which in most cases, all in these third world countries, eventually play against the rulers. It never played to their advantage. They wake up Sunday morning and they find themselves in trouble. So I don't worry about those things. I don't worry about those things. And I know at the bottom of any struggle, you could get people the best of weapons. It's the human element. I know many struggle, people get weapons and they drop the weapons and they run like hell. So it's not just weapons, it's the human element. But I'm hoping that Guyana never come to that. We owe it to Africans and Indians who were victims of white domination, slavery, and indenture. That whatever problems that we have, we don't try to resolve it by the guns. We resolve it by negotiations and sensible things. But I would say to the African community, as I said to the Indian community on Boredom Time, you see, I'm clear. I got a history so I could talk on these matters and I could go to jail on these matters. I don't care. I have a history. When Boredom was using the army against the sugar workers and so, Tacuma Ogunseye and WPA, we used to go up on platforms, joint with the PPP separately, and tell the African army and police that you are workers in uniform. And you must not allow the state to encourage you to use violence against your fellow workers. That is me history. And the PPP can't tell me now that I can't get a similar message to black people. So if they want to jail me for that, so be it. Boredom jail me for something else. And if they want to go down for jail me for that, so be it. I don't have no problems with that. In a struggle, some of us have to be symbols of sacrifice to inspire our people that, even though they're big and bad, even when we all, we could take the shots, okay, and stand up and fight. And they're going to inspire younger people. So I don't worry about all of the intimidation and the threat to lock up and so. Them is easy thing. They got the power to do that. I can't lock them up, they can lock me up. But what I got the power to do is stand up to them and the bullyism. And in the human element, all kinds of things could happen.
Yeah, people's power is something that we seem to have lost the understanding of. You understand? In Myanmar, the people are walking in the streets and they ain't got guns, and they're facing soldiers.
Soldiers. Yeah.
You understand? And the soldiers are
backing off.
Yeah.
So the human element is a funny thing. Today people look weak and tomorrow I'm seeing people push me on your side and take over this struggle and do things that me and you will hope that never happen. So it all depends upon, struggle not depending upon simply what the opposition do alone. Struggle in many cases depends on what the rulers do. It is the rulers who determine whether the struggle will be peaceful or whether the struggle will be violent. And what Jack Deo have done over time is to take away from Guyana peaceful forms of struggle. Normally, we come with the colonial period, look. As political people, as trade union people, you make a demand from the colonial state. You back it up with letter writing in your press and your paper. Then you bring out people in the road and go by the governor's house and you shout and say, Governor, we want change. And the colonial state make the adjustment. So demands was always backed up by political action in protests, street marches, public meetings. And those who in power make the historical compromise. Okay? But of course, as rulers, they made the compromise, they try to control the pace. We, the locals, they want fast change. Them, the colonialists, say, we go over here, we go so fast. But what they have done is took away that space. So the opposition, the people, can't win change by simply protesting and picketing anymore. They are asking you, if you're going to get change, you got to do more than that. So they lift the bar to a point And that is that I have always said that Jack Dio studied Burnham and Chetty, and he mastered both of them. Okay? And I don't underestimate Jack Dio. Jack Dio is mine. Jack Dio is a dangerous political force. You know?
Well, he has to be conquered one way or another. So, because as long as he's in the political sphere, there is not going to be any kind of change that we desire. The racist nature of the PPP is going to continue. The quest for domination is going to continue. The disregard for people of African descent and the basic tenet of wanting to keep them subjugated and in poverty, all of these things are going to be perpetuated because we're dealing with an individual who clearly is focused in that direction. And even though we talk about a president and all the other things, we know who directs everything that happens. Someone was making a joke the other day that all of a sudden after the budget that everybody now in the PPP can speak. They're coming with prepared scripts and so on, and are sounding as though they have a mind of their own. So
the man is staging his he's
prior to that, nobody could say anything unless apparently they were given
the script
instructions and permission to publicly speak. So at the end of the year, everybody had press conferences and so on. And of course, we talked about the aims, particularly with the nurses and so on. And we saw the follow-up with Jack Dio announcing that they will have to steal nurses to...
Still put the bandwagon.
Right. Well, we know who they're stealing, who they intend to bring. So, but we have to find a way to somehow defend our rights, to have our dignity restored. And it's not, as you said, people are feeling somehow beaten down because of the machinations of Jack Dio, threatening to lock people up. And he did, you were...
Well, I'm quote on Monday. The trial is supposed to start tomorrow at 1:30. Right, but we're not strangers to trials.
Right.
And state prosecution,
So
and oppression.
The current threat against the statement by Norton is in keeping with his pattern of thinking, because
But Norton, the PNC could deal with it.
prior to your arrest and so on, he said all you got to do is lock up some of them
And they get quiet.
they get quiet.
He got the root of it. He got the root of it. But Jack, to be honest, he doesn't believe. I mean, look, people sometimes, because of the dislike of Jack, sometimes you will believe Jack is stupid. He's stupid. Jack is very well, that he intimidating the WP. I know very well he intimidated the PNC and Norton. I don't think, he knows it very well, And he would think it 100 times before he asks the security forces to go against the PNC and Norton. He would think 1,000,000 times. But he would make the threat. You understand? But he wouldn't move to implement that.
But we've had cases, we got an agent in the police force who is accused of us murdering people.
Yeah, but
on the
you see,
Linden Bridge and all of these things.
yeah, you will have those little, those kinds of engagement. But when a president says he declares war upon the opposition, it's a different story. Or when the opposition says declaring war upon the government, it's a different story. It's not a little spillover from a protest and get a little out of hand. It's a different kind of engagement. Because You know, its implications are totally different.
You know, we need to have our, you know, energies somehow restored for the, I think the rally,
It's a start.
It's a start.
Anyway, like anything that you have to mobilize people in the public space, and people see the collective strength. This is what you need, you know. You know, the human mind and spirit is need this little injection, you know.
it should not be a one-off.
No, you got to be
Yeah,
consistent.
develop a
Yeah,
movement so
yeah,
that
yeah.
it grows and people begin to again
Feel a
believe
collective
that,
strength.
that they have power,
Yeah,
that people's power is still,
it's still there.
because right now you get the feeling that nobody wants to raise a voice, you know, and that there is no belling of the cat as such. So
You see, the country is so leadership driven and so party, and especially African constituency, because we got to sometimes mix up the country a divided country. So we ain't got no much influence over Indian behavior. We got to understand these things. Sometimes you know, we talk in the general politics about Guyanese, but when you're really looking at the country in a real in a political, you know, like a political battleground, basically a divided country, and we really talking to opposition. The bulk of opposition supporters are African Guyanese, you know, and in the African Guyanese history, the PNC is the party that they have invested in almost over 70 years or how much years, and they look for the party to give them leadership. And if the party is not giving them the leadership that they expect, then they will behave in a certain way. But as soon as the party begin to give them a different kind of leadership, they're also going to behave different. So, you know, all is not lost, but it is up to it's up to the PNC to decide how much respect it want to demand from the PPP. That's what it boils down to, you know.
well, you know, the budget 2024, I'm no economist, I don't even want to venture anywhere close to thinking that way, but as an individual who lives in a society, I can know from what I've heard that I'm going to be impacted in certain ways. What are your thoughts on the budget? We're talking about $1.146 trillion budget.
Well, as we said the last time, we in the WPA were prepared for that by Dr. Thomas, that a point in time will come when we're going to see flows of monies from oil that will transform the whole politics and engagement, and a lot of the economic imperatives that we were accustomed to would disappear. And a lot of the economic arguments that we used to make about the shortage of foreign exchange, you know, we used to look where we get a little 4% GDP increase, we in heaven. You know, Dr. Thomas have alerted us that all of that has gone. That we a totally new game. So I and the WPA was not surprised, and we are making the point since the arrival of oil that we are in a new dispensation. Money is not a problem, and this pattern will continue. If they got 1 point something trillion now, next year was election year, what are they going to do? Yeah, you know, they almost double the. You know, but the question that faces us as a country, these oil monies and this budgetary allocation is people's money. It's not Jack Dio and the PPP or the government money. It's the nation wealth. And they're spending, you know, our government is there to manage for a given period of time. And you're expected to manage in a reasonably fair manner, and to look after the wider interests of the entire country. We are in a situation here at present, okay, where the PPP have decided what is important. It's not so much the development of the country at this moment. The country development will have to take place because the government has to spend money. And in spending money, the government is giving money in the hands of the family, friends, and the lackeys, and they're building okay, they're building a new class, okay, a new capitalist class, and a new money class. So they will have to spend money, they will continue to spend money. So that is not the issue. The issue for them is to remain in government so that they could continue doing what they're doing. So their biggest priority is not so much development. Development is almost automatic. If you put a jackass in government and give them that kind of money, they're going to build roads, they're going to build this, they're going to build all of this. So among the development will come. So development is not really the critical matter here. The critical matter from the PPP point of view between now and 2025 is to use the oil money to make sure the PPP is returned to office in 2025. So they reduce everything to the party. The wealth of the country is being used for partisan, narrow interests. And the country has to make up its mind whether we're going to allow a group of politicians to use the national patrimony in that way, or we draw some red lines and say, look, at the end of the day, you're just a manager of the country, the state for a given period of time. This is our money, and we have to have a say in how it's being spent, and you can't reduce the national purse, okay, to the service of the PPP. That is really the challenge, So for me, my attitude to the budget is that the budget is not a matter that for much discussion, occasion. So it's to understand the logic that the budget is providing. The budget is providing an opportunity for PPP to tighten its dominance in the country. And we have to, if you push back on that, you're going to be pushing back on the budget. If you push back on the dominance, the PPP will have to renovate budgets differently. They have to make historical compromise. To the extent that you can push back on that, you're going to face next year probably 1.5 trillion or maybe 2 trillion, okay, which they're going to use to guarantee that they get back in power. So there will be no fair and free elections. So for me, yes, the parliamentarians are being paid out of the national purse. And if they're being paid, they got to work. So I guess they got to go in there and make the arguments. But I was listening to an interesting program, Dr. David Hines on Politics 101 a few nights ago. He had Eric Phillips and he had Vincent Alexander. And those are two brothers in their own way are very, much averse in what is happening in the country. And I really want to make an observation as it relates to Eric. Vincent is an old political veteran. I ain't got to say much there. I think he got tremendous experience in the country. I don't know, I'm willing to say the same thing about Eric in terms of politics. But Eric is a very resourceful brother. I mean, when he first come to the country, I remember Violet. He came to Agda, Violet Baptiste knew him. And I used to do a program for Agda called The African Perspective. And on my program, he first had his introduction to the Guyanese community in as far as the television is probably concerned. But the point I'm making is that Eric is a very resourceful person, and he's a thinker on a lot of economic and social matters. And I have great respect for his, in his thinking on these matters. And he made an impressive presentation on the program. But he said, I'm a politician, I'm a political activist, I'm a revolutionary. And I have to move beyond the rhetoric. And I would want to ask Eric if you really believe, if the opposition and the African community accept his budget or his manifesto, and we go to the PPP and say, look, this is what we want, you think the PPP can do it? Because what the manifestos and the ideas that Eric is pushing is to bring equity to African people, okay? And the PPP is not going to concede that because that is going contrary to the march of domination. Therefore, the best ideas and the best thing you put from people, the best alternative budget, the best alternative arguments you make ain't gonna get you nowhere. And sometimes our comrades, in the haste, to promote these things, they do unwittingly, they disarm us. And they allow us to believe that there's some reasonableness in the PPP. You're not dealing here with reasonableness. Jagdio, the PPP at present has no respect for anything that comes from the African community. Once it's impacting their dominance and once it is going in the direction of parity, okay, they have no respect for that and they will never ever make a compromise on it unless they're forced to do it. So I will say to Brother Eric, keep those ideas, develop it. We have to make the document because at some point we come back into office either in some form or the other, and those ideas are going to be important. But unless you could get back into office or unless you could create a situation where the PPP is forced to listen, you're really wasting time. And to criticize the opposition.
What are some of the things that
well, that's going to take too much time.
Okay.
We got some other things to deal.
Yeah,
but basically he came up with some interesting budgetary interventions that if you were to get it to implement, would lead to more balance in the spending of government money and impact the African village movement and the African economy and says, so.
In keeping with the agenda for reparations
And all of that,
But if you notice in the development scheme, look, they're talking about renovations and so on to 5 markets. We talk about Charity, Luziknan again, Corriverton. These fires that are happening in these markets, you understand?
It's like you find the police station, you see you go down there, you burn it down, and we build a 12-story thing.
Right.
Who will think get money for building 12-story? Friends and family.
So, but you have markets at present. The Luziknan market has been renovated over the past 10 years about 3 or 4 times. You got Pleasant's got a big market, Sunday, the biggest market possibly
On the East Coast.
And
Nothing no renovation taking place there.
Boxing at a market that needs attention. Golden Grove market. So you see the direction.
The apartheid behavior, man, is apartheid behavior.
So when they talk about the same thing you were saying, that Derek is looking at a vision where you're dealing with people who have the kind of interest of all the people.
Yeah.
They talk about one Guyana, they talk about one people, one
Oh, you should
Guyana.
want to listen. No.
And they're mouthing that this one Guyana includes everybody. But look at what is happening in this society and then identify where it is that this idea of one Guyana is manifesting itself.
This is why I'm very strong on the constitutional battle. Because we have to change the governance system. And I want to end to see when to take out politics because, look, man, I know the bulk of the Indian masses outside there, like the bulk of the African masses, are reasonable. They want a solution. But the weakness on both sides is that they're so tied to the parties, and whatever direction the party carry them in, okay, that sometimes the behavior look, okay, just like the machinations of the leaders from both sides over the historical period. But I think deep down, when you analyze the society, ordinary African Indian working people and ordinary people, they want a united Guyana where all of we helping one another and we can move forward in dignity and respect. Okay, I think that is the underlying desire of the country. But our political leadership and our political system hasn't been encouraging that for the last 60 or odd years. And we're bringing generations after generations behaving the same way. I remember the race thing at 16, now I'm 71. If I live long enough, by 6th of February, I'm 72. The young people just behave the same thing when I was 16. We haven't really guided our young people to new politics that is anti-race. In fact, we had them entrapped into race at a time where we got a lot of money and good reasons for fight. And if we don't care for the plunderers of the world, manipulate we and we killing one another, And our leadership is not providing, the kind of leadership people of indentureship and slavery and colonialism requires. The last thing that we should want in this Guyana space is Africans and Indians are at each other's throat at a time of plenty where we got enough resources to look after all of the historical deficiencies. So that is the criminal nature the present breed of politicians that are running the PPP. And if the PNC leadership continue the winner-take-all system and want to throw Africans in another winner-take-all elections, I will have to make the similar statement about them. But for now, they ain't got power. So you got to give them a little benefit of the doubt. Okay? But a time will come where they have to make it very clear whether they want the continuation of the winner-take-all system with all its consequences to the African community and their constituents, or whether they are prepared to invest in bringing a historical end to this form of system and we renegotiate a new, a new governance in the era of oil and plenty. That is the challenge. And I have said over and over, I have fought I have this struggle. I come from the working class as a market man, and nobody can tell me about poverty and poor. I could tell them about all kinds of things. And I know that this country has, at the moment, a chance to liberate poor people from poverty. The WPA proposal that Clive Thomas argued for structural, cash transfer, okay? Setting up the basis for universal income that will deal with poverty are important things. And if I always say it, if I am to say to Guyana, let me go to war, I say go to war on those things, the constitutions and those things, and fix it. America's Civil War had to determine the future of America, economically and politically. If we had to come down to that, and I hope we don't have to, and I have any saying in it, I would say, look, change the governance system, the oil money, and so correcting historical injustices are things that are worth fighting over than winner-take-all elections.
Yeah, well, what about the significant portion of this budget is coming from the borrowings from external agencies?
I mean, I want us, for me, my attitude to that is to take the lead from Dr. Thomas. I know he's studying the budget and he will give us guidance, over time. Now, I mean, I don't know how much time you got, because some of these things,
Maybe 4 minutes.
Okay. You see, any country has to be careful on your borrowing, your ratio of borrowing to your ability to earn and so. But you also has to bear in mind, whether
Incidents.
but whether institutionally we could police the money, these gigantic sums that you're borrowing and you're spending, and so whether it's coming from local source or external source, it's tremendous money we're talking about. And if you don't got institutions to manage it, a lot of the money can go into corruption and people's pockets. Okay? I know the classical argument, it's a fact that Guyana is one of the countries that have a very low debt to national GDP ratio. We got low with that. So therefore, objectively, you could say we got space borrowing. But why my concern is we're borrowing for, and whether you're using the money effectively so that when payback time comes, you have been in a position to pay back, and whether we're in a position to police the people money, which I don't think we are. But we're going to go back to the debt thing at probably another program.
Okay.
But there's a concern that we have to think, because millions of dollars, US dollars, could be disappearing from the treasury in these borrowing schemes and these projects,
Yeah, but if you look at the argument of Jackie in relation to salaries for public servants, he is contending that you don't want to raise people's salaries to a level that is unsustainable and so on. How does that factor in with what we just said in terms of borrowing on potential revenues coming from oil and the other sectors and so on. Isn't it somehow?
I don't give much ear to the Jack, the inflation argument, man. So when you're spending all this money in infrastructure, you're not throwing money in the economy, it ain't pushing inflation. So you're spending will push inflation, okay? But compensate the workers by giving them money to deal with the inflation. It's simpler. But he's not doing that. He wants to keep them in perpetual poverty because he probably believes the poorer, okay, you keep people, the easier for you to control them. But the classical thing, once the government is spending all the money, it's coming into the economy, it much propels amount of inflation. Okay? Inflation by itself is not necessarily bad if you could compensate people, and we got the money to compensate the workers with incomes that could deal with the inflationary pressures. You know, so we know Jagdeo, and Jagdeo knows better, because he's the economist by profession. But he playing these games because he knows that the Indian constituents, see, that is the backbone of PPP's political strength, it doesn't really care on these matters in a certain way. People care in a certain way, but they don't care in a certain way. I'm trying to be careful here, but I'm not saying that Indians, masses and the Indian community is not, don't care on some of these economic matters. But in the political behavior, is we own. And once is we own doing it, we're going to turn our face, give them the benefit of the doubt. And Jagdeo knows that. And that's what he's playing upon. He knows that he's not going to come under pressure from any large section of the Indian Guyanese community, whether it's working people, whether it's Indians working in the public sector or working in other areas of the economy. He knows that they're not going to likely to join Africans and to put pressure on the PPP, at least not now. So he feels he and the government is insulated, okay, from that kind of pressure. And that's why he could parade with all this nonsense about not wanting to give him workers increases. But if it was a different country and the Indian workers who are public servants were to dung tools and say we want better incomes, Indian teachers were to say, look, we dung tools, we want better salaries. Indian nurses were to say, you know, the money we give, we it's pittance. It would change the whole ball game, but he knows that the consciousness of the Indian community hasn't reached that point. Therefore, he has space for maneuver.
Yeah, I remember having strikes during my years of teaching, and you know, the non-striking workers were just as eager to receive the benefits from the strike, you know, just as the people who fought for it. You understand? But they ain't striking.
They ain't striking. I mean, I know if you were to go to vote in throughout this country on the Boxing proposal, WPA proposal at $1 million to every Guyanese household annually. And now they're getting outdated. Experts are saying they could get much more than that. But there's no section, African, Indian, Aboriginal, who's against the proposal. But who will come out and support it? Africans will more come out and support it, but Indians, while they want it, they might not come out and support it because it's their government in charge. I can't speak about the Amerindians because I really don't have the close contact with them, and I can't really work out the political dispensation at present. But I'm telling you, I know Indian comrades, Indian ordinary people stop me and ask me when we can get this thing implemented.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody realizes the sensible nature of the thing.
The other thing is, you know, but we got to look at, I mean, the agricultural sector. Lots of talk about, you know, becoming, again, what we would call during that time the breadbasket of the Caribbean. They're pushing a whole lot of new crops and so on. And they're talking about major interventions. But again, where are these interventions taking place? We've had a very good intervention under the APN Media Rate project that was bringing changes to Buxton, Moko, Ithaca, and so on. And the PPP derailed that as soon as they came into office, so that the gains that were within those projects, even flooding out the places and all of these things. And all of the talk now about having raw materials processed into secondary products and so on. So they're bringing on stream all these measures now to engage farmers But none is focused on the black community.
Apartheid, apartheid development. You know, you see, one of the sad things about this country and the PP's behavior, and then they make it Indians get a bad name. I mean, we at the end of the program, so we don't want to start some of these discussions just at the end because you can't really develop the points properly. Okay, is that
This is your last point.
yes,
Because we
they have a policy of consolidating every area of the economy that Indians come out the colonial period with the dominance. And having control that now you eat into the other areas that the Africans and the Americans may have. It is the domination model. So you're not going to promote African agriculture to balance off Indian agriculture.
yeah, so it's establishing dependence.
The dependence. And domination. Domination.
All right, Brother Ogun, it's been a pleasure having you again on the program to share your thoughts, which are always very enlightening. And tomorrow, your case begins at the
Yeah.
Vigilance Magistrates Court at 1 o'clock.
130.
1:30, so we'll see where that goes. And hopefully, that, victory is won against another attempt at being draconian by the PPP administration. To the people who have been with us this evening, I want to say thank you for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same channel, for another program of Water and Groundings. Do have a good night.
You throw some bombs on them today. I wonder what I don't say what channel I was.